All right, beautiful people. Welcome, welcome, welcome to this amazing info session on product management. My name is Bola. I lead the academy at Stacy and Lloyd. And this is sort of like a free session. We've brought an amazing person, highly intelligent, very experienced in product management, to just come here, to just chat about product management. We decided to do this because we strongly believe that the future of organization is product. I mean, that's why organizations exist. Products are avenues through which organizations solve human, market, societal problems, or market frictions, or challenges. And the people that understand the game of product are the people that will determine or decide the direction that organizations will go. So who do we have as our speaker? Well, like I said, very, very intelligent, very smart. So I'm just going to read profile, Christine. She has over a decade of experience as a product leader across many bleeding edge industries, including gaming, social, ad tech, and e-commerce. She's most recently director of product at PepsiCo, spearheading the mandate to enact digital transformation for a historically non-tech industry, food and beverages, and leading the direct-to-customer and business-to-business product team from the ground up. Before PepsiCo, she worked at the Real, a startup company that went through IPO in 2019. It's not really easy for a startup to go through IPO. It's a really big deal. While she was there, she led mission-critical products such as Purchase Path and consigning experience. She also worked at Amazon as a product manager, and at Amazon innovating social reading for Kindle and Goodreads. So if you know Kindle, that's one of the biggest products for Amazon, non-merchant product for Amazon. So she was at Amazon leading the innovation on that. She has a Bachelor of Arts from University of California, and a Master of Science in Economics from London School of Economics. I caught that, I shouldn't have, London School of Economics. She lives in New York City. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one, the only, Christine. So I'm going to stop sharing and then I will pass it on to Christine. So this is how we want to do it. We sent out a form to guys and we said, if you've got any question that you have, you can put it down and we'll first start by answering those questions. And then after that, we'll throw it open to others. So are you ready, Christine?
I'm ready. Nice to meet everybody.
Awesome. So do you want to quickly say hi to people before we get on? I probably didn't read your profile very well, so
no, it was great. You did a very good job. No, I'm really excited to be here and to help answer any questions. This is a safe space. If there's anything you've ever wanted to know, product, how to get into product, I'm here to help.
Awesome. So let's start first with a question that we got from Opeyemi Ewinla. She sent this question from Nigeria. And she said, what are the tips to effectively manage stakeholders?
That's a great question. And as you probably all know, and really depends. So if you past or you're thinking about being a product manager, you do a lot of user personas. And so I would really encourage you to think about your stakeholders in that same way. So, you might have stakeholders that are your peers, right? And so they're cross-functional. So you might have marketing, you might have, sales, you might have the stakeholders versus, if you're talking about leadership team. And as a product manager, you have to do both. You have to do, the horizontal as well as the vertical. And so I think one way of effectively managing stakeholders for both groups is, the first is you bring them along on your journey. As you're doing product discovery, as you're making decisions, you want them to have a voice as well. And so that you're not doing it in a vacuum. Because what happens if, you make all these decisions, you do all this work, solo, and then later you bring them in, is they say, well, I actually don't know if this is the right decision because I never thought about it. And so what you want to do is you either prime them. And so you can either have a meeting with them just to give them, this is what we're thinking, this is how I approached it, this is the decision I made. And then when you get to the actual meeting, the actual decision making meeting, the decision is already made and you're just kind of there, everyone's there to get the green light. And so this can take a lot of time up front, but as you build trust over time, you'll find that you do have to do that less and less.
Cool stuff. Yeah, that's really great. I don't know if Opeyemi is here. If you are, let me know if you're really great with that, if you're really cool with that answer, but I think that's really cool. Let's move on to the second question. So this one came in from Martins in Ottawa. He says, with customer experience benchmark being determined by the last best experience the customer has had with any brand or product, how have you dealt with this challenge at Amazon or Pepsi?
That's a really interesting question. And I would really think about, there's a lot of, the product is so interesting because it intersects so many different functions and disciplines, right? It not only intersects engineering and business, but also intersects psychology as well. And so a lot of the psychology is what really drives user experience. And so this question is really about recency bias. And if you think about it, in psychology, it's just, the last thing that you did stood out to you the most. And so you can imagine, when you're doing interviews, you always want to be either the first or the last, right? Or, and think about that in kind of your own life and how that affects what you see. And so the way that I would think about it is not just, recency bias might be, a problem, but it doesn't have to be a problem if you re-engage your users correctly. And so if you're finding that, they're like, hey, I like using Amazon to buy my products, and that's the last thing I use, and I don't want to use this new one. You think about how to engage those users with different hooks. And so that could be a discount. If we're talking e-commerce, it could be a discount, it could be an email, a new promotion, a new product, spotlight. Think about what else can drive them to that experience and try it out. Because when you think about it, it's, the problem is switching costs. If someone is already using something as well, it's really hard to get them to switch to something new. And so, think about what will really drive them. And again, put yourself in the user's shoes.
Right, cool. So we got Opey's response to your question, to your response. And she said, thank you, I appreciate your response to my question. And I think that means that, it worked really well. So the third question that we have here says, how to create digital product for the future. That's question 3. Yeah, you can take it away.
Yeah, so I would kind of think about it in a couple of ways. The first is, as you're starting out in your product journey, a lot of times what you're focused on is execution, right? You're trying to make sure that, you're building the right thing at the right quality, you're validating your hypotheses correctly. And as you move on in your product journey, as you become more and more senior, you start taking on more of the strategy side of things. And so, rather than looking at competitive analysis in terms of, hey, does my product have all of these same features? You're thinking about anticipating needs for the future. And so a similar discipline that's a counterpart to product is financial planning analysis, FP&A. And that's when you're anticipating what could be going on next year, in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, right? And so you have these financial analysts trying to figure out, okay, the growth of the market is going to be X. The total opportunity value here is Y. And so you do the same thing that you do for product, and you think about the growth. So I'll take, I don't know if any of you have used Clubhouse as an example. Clubhouse is like, okay, yeah, so Clubhouse, came out of nowhere. And, I think it really hooked people because it's still it's still the same concept as, you might like, like a podcast or anything like that. But, you add on this social element. And I think what Clubhouse did really well is they anticipated that in this new world where we're working from home, we're staying at home more, you want to have some way of listening to your podcast with a social angle to it. And so you're trying to anticipate what's going to happen. And so if you want to think about it, ask yourself, what will happen when we all have herd immunity in, I don't know, 6 months? What's the world going to look like next year? How many people are going to go back to work? And then when you start thinking about, plus climate change, what are some of the pain points people might experience? And, you put those views on a product, and you can start putting together a future strategy for your product.
Nice. No, I 100% agree with your analogy or with your reference to Clubhouse. Like you said, we listen to podcasts, right? People listen to podcasts, they get the same sort of vibe, but they remove that interactivity, you remove sort of that engagement, you remove that that connection with the person. And when Clubhouse came in, it literally took over. It literally took over, and people were like, oh my goodness, So I 100% agree with you on that. We have another question. I don't know if this is project management or product management, but it says, what is project management in the tech industry like? Let me assume that it was supposed to be product management. So maybe you can respond from that assumption.
Yeah, and this is actually an interesting question because I grew up in Silicon Valley. I went to, I grew up there. I went to Berkeley, which is also, in the Bay Area. And so all my life, I've been surrounded by tech and startups. And what stands out for me, the tech scene there versus other locations, is this idea of thinking outside the box. And, there are a lot of companies that want to do it, but they don't do it in a tech-minded way. And what I mean by that is what you want to do is prioritization is really important, right? You want to make sure you're working on the right thing at the right time, of course. But just as important is validating whether or not those are the right ideas. And so a lot of times, when you're trying to roll out a feature, product managers or project managers as well can get a little too caught up in, okay, I just need to get this thing out. And this is going to be a really big thing. So let's just take, you're trying to add a sharing functionality to, to like a QR code sharing functionality to, I don't know, TikTok or something. You're trying to like add, you can add and follow. And so someone's like, okay, well, I want QR codes. I want email sharing. I want SMS sharing. I want WeChat sharing, everything. And so project management thinking is around, okay, I need to deliver all of that. But a product person will think, okay, what is the smallest thing that I can deliver to validate my hypothesis? And maybe you start with email and you say, okay, share an email link, see how well it does. If it does well, maybe the next thing you do is SMS, and then you kind of start going down the list, because once you maybe get to 2 different sharing methods, you're like, oh, we actually captured 99% of that audience we wanted to capture. We don't need to do QR codes or anything else. And so a lot of that is thinking outside the box. A lot of it is challenging the status quo as well, especially in Silicon Valley, right? You got Google, Facebook. They did not listen to the regulations. they were like, you know what, it's worth it to us to rack up these fines from the government, because at the end of the day, the impact is much greater. And so thinking with that kind of mindset, I think is really special in tech.
Oh, a lot of things that you said, I see them even outside of tech. First is building what we usually call MVP, right, to validate our thinking, to validate our assumptions, to validate our thought process. What you don't want to do is release a bunch of things that people don't need, that people don't want. And what you find is you spend all of your time, all of your energy building 25 things that nobody wants. Matter of fact, there's this, I can't remember, I think it was a study that was done, and the result was more than 50% of software functionalities are rarely used. That's disturbing. These guys have spent a lot of resources, energy, time building that 50%, and nobody is using it. That time they could have spent building the few features that people want to use and enhance it and upgrade it and all of. So I'm at home with that thought. There's this other question from someone says, what is product management? Big and small.
That's a broad question, but let me try, and maybe the group here can help chime in as well as what they think. So when I think about product management, what I really think about, a lot of people say you are the CEO of this product, and in many cases that is true, especially if you're at an early stage startup or you're at a small company. You just don't have that many people with a stake, in the ownership of the product. And so you can say that. I like to think of it more as the product is the glue between all of these different functions. And what you're really trying to do at the end of the day is you're the voice of the customer, at the user, right? Because you have all of these competing voices. You have sales team telling you, this is what they've said out in the market, and you got to build this. You got, your CEO and CTO, whoever, saying, the board is giving me pressure. We need to make money. You have all these other people, marketing is saying, we're spending all these marketing dollars. We need to make sure it's valuable. There's no one sticking up for the user, the end user, the customer, the consumer, people like you and I who use these things every day. And so at the end of the day, I think it's really, you're the voice of the customer and you're the glue holding all of these functions together. You're the one that makes sense of all of this noise, all of this information, and you're sifting through it and you're filtering out the ones that don't matter and the ones that do matter. And so a lot of people don't really understand product management because they're like, well, what are you actually doing with your day, right? Because we're not engineers, we're not coding, we're not designing, what do you actually do? And a lot of it is up here. You're the brain of everything.
Cool. So there's this other question from Chizoba in Burlington. Oh my goodness, 5 questions in one. And the question is, the first one is, how to be a product manager, product owner without experience. The second question is, what are the differences between product owner and a product manager? And then the third, what are the specific applications, tools, or software that a product manager or a product owner should learn? 4, how to ace product owner interviews without prior experience. 5, how to write a resume that's suited for product ownership. We should build a course around this questions.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably talk about our course later on, but a lot of the course will touch on these topics in detail. So I will say that let me take a step back and think about what I was saying earlier to my question. What is product management? You're kind of the glue holding everything together. And so as the glue, you do a lot of different things. You're the voice of the customer. You're managing stakeholders. You're looking at business trends, industry trends, whatever's happening out in the world. that, and you're constantly, you're constantly evaluating, right? Because if you're doing something, you can't be doing something else. And so you're always making sure that that's the right thing that you're working on is, what's needed. And so how to become a product owner, product manager without experience. A lot of you have probably already done this in your current role or your previous role. Like think about one project that you've done end to end, where you're like, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? How do you approach it? What is your methodology? What did you do to achieve it? And what was the outcome, right? That whole end-to-end cycle. So, like, let me take an example. When I was in finance, for a very short amount of time. I did not like wearing a suit. It was not fun. But, something that I did was, hedge fund research. So we wanted to figure out where to invest money. And so what I would do is I would interview a lot of these hedge fund managers and ask them, how well is the fund doing? Get the data, right? What percentage returns are you getting year on year? You want to look at 30-year return versus 1-year return, all that stuff, and I wasn't doing product at the time, but a lot of the same skills are there. You're interviewing, you're trying to figure out what the actual problem is. And then, I would, write up an analysis and I would make my recommendation. And so all of that same skills you would do in product today. And so when I think about how you want to frame yourself or come off in an interview or in a resume, think about all of the things that you did with impact. Like, was there something you did in, let's say you're in supply chain. Was there some improvement that you recommended that resulted in an optimization? Was there better warehouse picking? Did you reduce time spent on the warehouse floor by 20%? If so, that's a great example to put on your resume. And product managers, and especially people who are hiring product managers, look for that. They look for whether or not you are measuring your impact with a metric. And so, I really encourage you to think about your past experience, any project you've done that was end to end. And if you haven't done anything, see if you can do that today in your current job. Is there anything that you could do? Say, ask your boss, maybe, or your manager, ask them, hey, is there anything I could take on? And then I'd like to take on more responsibility. Because as a product manager, you're always trying to be proactive as well. Things that might not be your job description, you kind of have to know about anyway. And I know there's a question in the chat about entering credit card details. However, the last mile delivery is a huge a customer pain point. And so is that part of if let's say you only own checkout as a product manager, is last mile delivery part of your remit? I think so, kind of, right? Because you want to make sure, think about it this way. As a customer, would I want to rate DoorDash as a good delivery provider if I never received my food? Right? And so of course it matters. And it's about kind of working through it with them. And so you might not own it, but you want to consider it as part of your remit. And I think that's what makes products so difficult, but so meaningful, because you're doing that whole end to end. I think, question 6, bullet number 2, what is the difference between product owner and manager? I actually would love Bola's thoughts on this as well, because he's an expert in this. But the way I think about a product owner is more on the execution side. They write user stories. They get the requirements to write user stories and to execute with the team. The product manager, and a lot of times, does that, including all of the other business strategy as well.
Yeah, you know what? You are right. And I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to use an example to respond to this question. Just give me a minute to... I didn't say anything.
Going down the list, question number 6, bullet point number 3, specific software a product owner should learn. I would say that overall, my philosophy is the right tool for the job, right? And so, whether or not if you and your team think an Excel spreadsheet is good enough for now because you are, I don't know, you're 3 people and you haven't gotten funding yet, totally fine, right? Totally fine. If you're thinking, but it's really about the fundamental concepts underlying these tools, right? Don't let the tools run you. Use the tools as tools. And so you always need a tool for prioritization, right? And hopefully that will also help you build out your roadmap. And that can be Jira. Jira has a roadmap tool. That can be Trello. It can be a lot of tools. But I would say that's kind of my philosophy. The short answer is usually what people are looking for, as in terms of skills, is do you know how to use Jira or Pivotal Tracker or one of those like user story like ticket type tools. Are you able to whiteboard in wireframe as well? And so Miro, M-I-R-O, is a hot thing on the market right now. I've also used Mural, M-U-R-A-L, both great whiteboarding tools. And I think it's also very different whiteboarding remote over Zoom than it is in person, right? You see Bola's board behind him. In person, you're just taking sticky notes, you're moving them around, you're drawing, much easier than trying to use your mouse and you're trying to drawing. So I think it's really worth signing up for those tools and just trying them out on your own time too. Miro and I think Mural as well are both free, and so at least a free trial, and so you can always try those out. Wireframing tools, you can really do any type of wireframe. You could take a piece of paper and draw a wireframe. Like think about a website that you love or an app that you like. What about the layout makes it usable? What about the layout makes it easy to understand what to do next? And so, I think a lot of it is doing that work on your own and, doing your due diligence too, and showing that, especially if you're interviewing, showing the hiring manager that you did your homework, right? You've gone out and you've gone above and beyond. You've thought about, your favorite app, your favorite product, why you like them, why you don't like them, what trade-offs the development team might have made, right? Think about your favorite app and you're like, okay, well, let me just I'll take DoorDash again as an example. I wish DoorDash, which is a food delivery service, had a way to bookmark or favorite my favorite restaurants, because every time I have to scroll through and I can't find them. And so you think about it and you're like, we'll go put my product manager hat on. Why did they not add that feature? What was the trade-off? What could be complex about that? And then when you start digging into that and thinking that way, it's almost like a light bulb turns on, and you're starting to think like a product manager. I think that kind of helps answer number 4 as well. How to ace product own, interviews. And I'll say that, I was something, a very long time ago, I started off not being a product manager and I was trying to break into product management. And I got a lot of no's, like I think we're all going to get no's at every point in our career. I think the thing is to be, 1, confident, but 2, do your homework. Because what I heard a lot is, no, you're too junior, you don't have experience, but you have potential. And so you want them to say that to you too, and say, what you have potential. And then you wait for that company who's ready to coach and take you on as a junior product manager. Because what they see is that, hey, I'm thinking like a user. I'm thinking like a person who uses this product. I know the product inside and out. And so let's say you're interviewing for Facebook. I've actually had a lot of candidates who I'll ask them, have you used my product before? Or have you visited the website? And they say no. And immediately I'm like, I don't think you're the right candidate, because I want someone who has visited the website at least, right? You've taken notes, you know how it works and what doesn't work, what improvements you'd like to make to it. Do that work ahead of time. And I promise you, it'll go a long way. People will see that you put in the work. And then 5, how to write a resume. I kind of answered it earlier, but think about impact, right? You're always thinking about the metrics that you're driving. Let's see, in a past life, I also worked on client pitches. And so one of the bullet points I had on my resume early is pitched for 5 proposals, won 3, right? And then you can say, oh, well, that's 60%. That's pretty good, right? And and so think about, being metric driven, being data driven. How can you add that to your resume? Because that really stands out. People don't want a long laundry list of things. They don't want long sentences. They want to know impact right away. If you think about a thesis that you're writing, you don't want to see, you know, it's not a surprise at the end. You want it right away.
Awesome. Cool stuff. Yeah, you know, I was nodding and I was like saying, go. So we have about, you know, 15 more minutes, maybe 20. There's this other question that says, what are anti-patterns to product management? Anti-patterns.
Oh, I'd love to know a little bit more around that question. If whoever asked it is here,
Right.
What do you mean by that?
I think this came from Patrick Yu from Brampton. Oh, sorry. Okay, we can move on. So there's this question. I think you've sort of answered it, but you know, let's see. As someone trying to break into product management, from project management, is the knowledge of the industry a constraint? I've been able to move around industries as a project manager. Is it a challenge, and how does one deal with that?
So I will say it is not necessarily a constraint. However, it can help you. And so let's say you're a project manager in, you know, you work, again, let's use DoorDash, right? You're a project manager at DoorDash and you're trying to become a product manager in DoorDash. That can actually be a smoother transition for you because you already know, you know, the industry, you already know the numbers, the data, right? You should probably know how many users there are on DoorDash, you know, daily active users, monthly active users. You know how the delivery works. Delivery is one of the hardest parts about, you know, some of these apps is the actual delivery. And so it can be a much smoother transition. And a lot of times, you know, there are paths open at these companies from moving to project to product management. And so, you know, maybe, you know, you're telling me, Christine, DoorDash is not my dream company. And I think that's fine. And I think it's a little bit about getting your foot in the door too, because right now the demand for product managers is much higher than the actual supply. And so whatever you can do to get that experience, I think is a win. Now, whether or not, you know, is that a constraint, you know, not, you know, trying to move into a different industry? Of course not. It is not. Again, you have to do the homework, right? If you're trying to move into electric vehicles or something like that, do your homework, you know, read research, read the news, you know, research what are the top companies in that industry. But it will be a little bit more difficult. That's not to say you shouldn't do it, but I would always say you could, you know, might be helpful. And I used to do product career coaching as well. What I always tell the students is have a plan A and a plan B, right? So if there's a way you can work with your current company to move into product, but also have a plan B. Think about the industries and the companies you'd love to work for. What are these dream jobs? And, you know, outline the steps that you need to get there. Interview, especially interview at, I always say interview at companies you don't really care about for practice, right? And then also have companies that you do care about. And, you know, a lot of it is just this journey too, you know, as you do, you know, you might be really bad at the interviews, the first 3 that you do. By interview 5, you might be like, oh, I'm improving, I'm getting better. By interview 10, you're probably killing it, right? Yeah.
Cool. There's this other question. It says, is there any golden rule or even pitfalls to avoid when it comes to determining the right metrics to measure?
Yeah, so I actually get asked this a lot. You know, what is there a golden rule, or is there a and I would, whenever I actually dig deeper into that question, I usually find that there's a deeper thing, you know, and it might either be, well, I don't really know what this feature is supposed to do, or I don't really understand the goal of the company. You know, I've just been asked to do this thing and I don't understand. Because I think, you know, I always think, you know, if you had full ownership over it, it would be clearer what the metric is. And so I would, you know, a way to think about it is the kind of framework to think about it is, one, you can use a user journey, right? You can say, as a user, So let's say, you're trying to redesign a sign-up flow. You need to create an account to do something. And so you're redesigning it and you're like, oh, I don't know what metric I should use to determine whether or not it's good or not, right? Think about the user at that point in time. For this feature, I need to sign up for an account in order to do something. And so I think a really interesting one is conversion, right? You're converting from a non-account holding user to someone with an account. And so you want to know what percentage of users have an account. How many percentage of users see that page and they're like, oh, I don't want to, and leave. And then you can see, let's say that you do that analysis and you're like, okay, 80% see the sign up page and they leave right away. At that point that there's something wrong with that page. You don't know why, but there's something wrong with that page. And at least it focuses you on that. And so think about that. Think about the life cycle of the product too. I've been helping and consulting this other startup, pre-seed startup, and at the stage that they're at, activation is really important, right? So you have this huge funnel, you're getting users into the funnel, you want them to activate. And when activate, I mean, what is that action that you want them to complete? Is it to look at something? Is it to sign up for a newsletter? Is it to order something? Once you know what that action is, then they're like, oh, that's them activated. And because they're a pre-seed startup, they don't really care about ROI at that point in time, right? They're like, we just want to get users into the funnel. And so that's another good way of looking at it too, is the life cycle of the product. And then there's a lot of other frameworks as well that I won't go into too much detail here because I know we're short on time, but I have a lot of frameworks that we can use.
Cool stuff. Then I think we have just 2 more questions. So this next question came from, the person that sent the second question. So when dealing with a service product like e-commerce product that works perfectly in terms of user shopping, blah, blah, blah. However, I think you responded to this, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
okay.
I did, but let me just really quickly go over it again. I think, for me as a product manager, it is definitely something to consider and think about. Now, whether or not, but I think the other thing too is when you work at a company, collaboration is really important. So you don't want to go into last mile and be like, hey, product manager for the last mile delivery, you're not doing it right. This is not good, right? So you want to work with them too. And maybe frame it as, hey, I've noticed there is some inefficiencies here. Once the user has checked out, a lot of times they don't receive their delivery or whatever the problem is. But as a product manager, I always say, just because your function is just here, it doesn't mean that you can't look at everything else. And I think a good product manager would look at last mile delivery.
Sounds good. Okay, last question. What advice do you have to seek mentorship from product leaders that don't know you? What's the best way to approach such people? I'm thinking someone like you.
Yeah, so I get a lot of outreach, and I'm trying to think through when I respond and when I don't. And usually I don't respond if it's just like a LinkedIn request with no other information to it. And so, like a cold, and think about it, a cold call, like someone ringing your doorbell or calling you, a lot of times you don't pick up, right? And so I think it's helpful to add some context. Use your network as well. A friend of a friend of a friend is still better than a cold call. And Bola has a great network here. If people you see are interesting, that are connected, many degrees down the line, I think it's worth, sending a message and saying, hey, I'm interested in this. Put in a little fact that, to shows that you did some research as well. Like, hey, hey, Christine, I noticed that you used to work at Amazon and on Kindle. I love reading, whatever it is, right? Something to kind of engage me.
Yeah, I agree. As you were talking, I was just thinking, I sort of work with, people. I don't want to say a lot of people, work with people. I co-founded like a social enterprise that does mentoring and coaching. And honestly, when I get a message from someone and I feel some kind of connection with the message, I tend to respond more than if it was just, so for example, oh, hi, Bola, congrats on your new gig. How are you loving it? It's been a really great, blah, 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 blah. By the way, I noticed that you've done this. I would like your input on this. What are your thoughts? I'll respond to that more than, hi, Bola, I'm trying to get into product management. What are the things that I'll do? Can we have a chat? I'm like, bro, come on.
That's right.
Come on, like, come on. So I 100% agree with you, yeah. Okay, so we have just 10 more minutes. We'll take 3 minutes for other questions that we haven't covered or that have not been asked. If anyone has any question that's not been answered directly or indirectly, you can unmute yourself and ask. Otherwise, we'll just go straight to the next thing on the agenda. So anyone's got anything that they want to ask? If you can't really unmute yourself, you can send it to me or send it to Christine. We have 3 minutes.
I think there was a question about anti-pattern. Hi, Christine.
Hi.
Okay, and well, I looked at it. I didn't send in the question, but I think simply put, the question might be saying, as a product manager, what is the absolute must not do? That's
Oh, the do not do. Oh,
the do not do's, yeah, for product management, yeah.
I think the first do not do is because you work with so many different people of all backgrounds. First thing you do not do is you do not tell them what to do, because you'll find out one of the hardest parts about being a product manager is that you influence without authority. And so if you start off, pissing them off, it's not gonna be good. I think that's one thing. I think a lot of product managers are come in, they're like, okay, I'm the CEO of the product. Now everyone has to do what I have. And that's not really the case in a lot of cases. And I think also, that's not kind of how people want to work either. They want to collaborate rather than be told what to do. I think the second thing that I think is really important is, as you're gathering requirements, it can be from business, it can be from users, whoever. A lot of product managers don't understand the point of gathering requirements. They think, okay, I'm just going to take these 5 things, I'm going to take them here, and I'm going to write them and put them into user stories, and the engineering team is going to implement them. That's not product. That's just moving information from one place to another place. And your engineers and your scrum master, your product owner is going to be like, what are you doing? And so what you're really doing there is you're filtering for them. You're thinking ahead. You're thinking 5 steps ahead, 5 steps upwards, 5 steps back, to think through, well, they're asking for a refund functionality as an example, but what they really want is the last mile delivery is bad. And that's why people keep asking for refunds. And so you don't really want a refund tool. You just want to improve the last mile delivery. And so a good product manager thinks through those and thinks, a few levels deeper. They don't just take the request and implement it.
Yeah, absolutely. Typical the do's that we don't, or the don'ts that we do. Nice, I love that. Okay, let's see. I think a message just came in. The example you gave as a difference between the product manager and the product owner. The product owner role seems to be almost the same as business analyst role, with reference to the example you gave. So, Rama, this conversation about the business analysis and the product ownership role, I think we can have that outside of this. You can engage me personally, and then I can tell you like that different, right? Even IIBA recognizes that, and they've created another certification for product ownership analysis. It's still like different. Does that mean that a business analyst cannot play as a product owner? No, it doesn't mean that a BA can play as a product owner, but you need to have a slightly different mindset and a slightly different skill set, you know. But let's have a chat about this later, right? Okay, so I want to share, no worries. Wanted to share something with you. Okay, so myself and I can't see myself and Christine, we've sort of like, because folks have been asking, oh, you know, I want to get into product management, you know, do you have like trainings, X, Y, and Z? So we've designed a new training program for product management, and it's called the Product Management Program. So this is 6 weeks, 6 weeks of learning, 6 weeks of some sort of doing, 6 weeks of research, 6 weeks of, you know, they used to call this stuff fellowshipping, like collaborating, learning from Christine. It's going to start on the 18th of September. In this training, in this program, you get to learn about product management, you get to learn about user research, you get to learn the principles, the frameworks, the concept about product management. You also get to learn about the tools that we will use, you know, like Miro, like Mural, like Balsamic for wireframing, you know, for prototyping XYZ. You get to also do, you know, Christian called it app tear down, something like that, you know, and such that at the end, you will be equipped with the knowledge and sort of like the, not exactly the experience, but, you know, the, what's the word that you need to sort of like kickstart your product management training. How do you register? Well, a lot of information available on the course page itself. So you go to bit.ly/2021_PM. I'll put the link here again. I'll put a link here again. Register, it's bit.ly/2021_PM. Register for it. Apart from learning and all, Kristen is also going to be doing some resume, like typical product manager resume critique building. She's also going to be doing some interview prep and interview coaching, like how do I answer questions? What are the typical questions that, I mean, she's been a product manager, you know, in a number of organizations. So it means that she must have somehow gone through that interview process. She's a product director of product now, and she's been hiring. It means that she must have been at the hiring table deciding who to bring on. So she's going to share all of those things as well. If you're interested, we're looking forward to having you in class. bit.ly/2021_PM. That is the link. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. Look forward to having everyone in class. Last word, Kristen.
No, thank you so much for being here and giving us your time. I hope you'll check out the course. You know, we created it with a lot of activity and activities in mind. So the idea is by the end of 6 weeks, you'll have done almost everything that you would do in a job as a product manager. You'll have written a PRD, you'll have done a wireframe, you'll have built a roadmap, et cetera, et cetera. So really tried to keep it, you know, as real life as possible.
Right. Awesome. No, I'm really excited about this. And, you know, I'll share this, and I know, you know, you and I had talked about it. So we'd have like a lot of people say, oh, Stacey and Lloyd, do you have like a product management course? And we said, we don't have yet because we haven't found the right person to partner with to develop this. And when we came in contact with Christine, right there and then we knew this was the person that we needed to get all of those things that we want people to learn about product management. And that's where we're launching it right now. Really excited about this. I hope that you're excited as much as we are. And we look forward to seeing you in class. So register and then we'll communicate with you after that. That will be all for now. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Have a good afternoon. Bye for now.
Bye, Bola.